Armenia directly to deliver an amazing session. So please welcome Rohan Singh. Give a great round of applause.
Hi everyone, I am Rohan Singh and I work as a senior cloud infrastructure engineer at SADA, an inside company. पहले हम SADA हुआ करते थे, फिर last year हम बिक गए क्योंकि नीयत खराब थी तो हम बिक गए. तो now we are SADA, an inside company. I'm also a Google Cloud Champion Innovator, fortunately and unfortunately for modern architecture. I mean, I applied and they gave me modern architecture. I don't know why. So yeah. And today we're gonna see, or I'm gonna talk about GKE Enterprise. उससे पहले मेरे को ये जानना है कि how many of you have like are working in cloud like as a cloud engineer, DevOps, something? भाई इतने ही लोग हैं मतलब यार किसमें डाल दिया मेरे को यार. Okay. और GKE पे काम किया like Kubernetes किसने सुन रखा है? ओ भाई तगड़ा भाई तगड़ा ठीक है. Okay. So just like Kubernetes, every cloud provider has providing the managed Kubernetes. Google में उसको GKE बोलते हैं, which is known as Google Kubernetes Engine. Amazon का अपना अलग है, Azure का अपना अलग है. And on the top of that, we have something called GKE Enterprise. And today we're gonna see, like I'm gonna show you the pros, cons, like how companies are leveraging it. And we're going to see, like, do we really need it, or it's just a hype that Google is trying to create along with the other products like Microsoft Azure. So, अब मैं अगर ऐसा बोलूँ कि I am putting my perspective, showing my perspective as an innovator, so the answer is yes. You need it, that's it, thank you. But मैंने परेश को ये प्रॉमिस किया था कि इस स्टेज पे मैं गूगल की एडवोकेसी नहीं करूँगा. It's gonna be like my all views. कि जो मैंने उस पर काम कर रखा है मैं वहीं सारे पॉइंट्स कवर करूंगा जिसको जो सर्विसेज या उसकी फंक्शनैलिटी मैंने उसमें कवर की है जो मैंने उसको इम्प्लीमेंट किया है. ओके सो फर्स्ट सेशन में हमने लाइक विशाल ने बोला कि लाइक मोर देन 82% कंपनीज आई थिंक इट वाज 82 आई एम नॉट श्योर बट या मोर देन 82% कंपनीज आर फोकसिंग टू इम्प्लीमेंट द जेन एआई इन नेक्स्ट 3 years. Similarly, according to the VMware research survey, I don't know कितना सच्चाई है कितना झूठ है, but मैंने उठा के छाप दिया है. तो according to the VMware research survey, the company is gonna prioritize the cloud modernization and integration app to any public cloud. I'm not talking about only GCP. I'm also talking about AWS, Azure, Oracle Cloud, or Alibaba in China. So, which means more cloudification is coming. And also the more Gen AI thing is coming as per Vishal thing. Okay, so cloud has multiple models like IaaS, which is an infrastructure as a service. Then we have PaaS, platform as a service. Then SaaS, FaaS, BaaS, मुन्ने की SaaS, बहुत सारे चीजें हैं ऐसे. तो out of that, the IaaS, infrastructure service as a growth has like leading the table right now with 30% growth in last some years. And yes, that, you know, ये मैंने जानबूझ के ऐड किया क्योंकि because I am a champion innovator. So Google Cloud is actually leading. You know, Google Cloud is actually leading this entire IaaS table with 63.7% adoption rate in years. And Kubernetes, you know, सबका favorite है. Like everyone talks about Kubernetes. When I was a student, I used to flex, hey dude, you know, I know Kubernetes. And they were like, oh man, they're so good. So similarly, the companies are also trying to flex, trying to get modernized, trying to get, like be in the race by adopting Kubernetes. So according to this CNCF annual survey, there are more than 60% companies have adopted the Kubernetes to run their microservice to compete in this. This is actually a 96% increase in the adoption rate if you see or if you compare with the previous year adoption. And yeah, because my job is not only about implementing the solution or designing the solution, it's also about talking to the clients. I talk to the client on my daily basis. So yeah, more companies are right now planning to adopt Kubernetes. And by the way, if someone is not aware of, Kubernetes is actually the fastest growing open source project in the history. And it is expected to be growth by 23.4% by 2031. Yep. Okay, so we saw the IaaS. Some of the reasons that I can think about why IaaS is growing very fast. Number one, all the legacies companies. I mean, it's not like सारी companies cloud पे move कर गई हैं. ऐसे बहुत सारी कंपनीज हैं जो आज भी अपना लेगेसी सिस्टम चला रही हैं और ऑन प्रेमाइसेस पे चल रही हैं और इवन अगर वो क्लाउड पे आने का सोच रही हैं तो दे डोंट हैव एन लाइक अ प्रॉपर डायरेक्शन लाइक हाउ टू डू इट. So this is one of the reason like why companies are adopting IaaS a lot. It's like number one reason is like lift and shift. तो लिफ्ट एंड शिफ्ट में क्या होता है, हम उनका ऑन प्रेमाइसेस पे जो चल रहा होता है हमने उसको उठाया, उसको कॉपी पेस्ट करके क्लाउड पे कर दिया. नो री आर्किटेक्टिंग, नो कोड चेंजेस, लाइक नथिंग एल्स. लाइक वी डिड क्लाउड माइग्रेशन फ्रॉम ऑन प्रेमाइसेस टू GCP फॉर F&B, Singapore F&B फूड एंड बेवरेजेस कंपनी फॉर मोर देन 100+ विंडोज़ VM. और वो एग्जैक्टली कॉपी एंड पेस्ट था. क्लाइंट ने बोला हमें कुछ नहीं चाहिए, हमें बस क्लाउड पे आना है टू बी इन दिस रेस, अदरवाइज जो दूसरी फूड एंड बेवरेज कंपनी है वो हमको ओवरटेक कर जाएंगी. एंड वी आर वेरी ओल्ड, वी आर इन द बिजनेस सिंस 1950s और 1960s. जब सिंगापुर आई डोंट नो मतलब एग्जिस्ट करता था कि नहीं करता था, आई एम सो सॉरी फॉर दिस बट आई डोंट नो द फैक्ट. बट वो ऑन प्रेमाइसेस चल रहे थे और दे वर रनिंग लाइक वेरी ओल्ड विंडोज़ VM. तो द चैलेंज वॉज लाइक दैट. So yeah, this is like one of the reasons why IaaS is growing very fast, why companies are adopting IaaS, because it's easier. But according to some like prediction survey, maybe in some years the SaaS, software as a service as a software, software as a service, I'm so sorry, would actually overtake the IaaS. अभी उसका क्या reasons हैं, like मैंने पढ़ा ही नहीं उसकी रिपोर्ट, बट हाँ ऐसा प्रिडिक्टेड है कि SaaS would overtake IaaS in some years. Okay, so when we talk about cloudification and when we say or we suggest the client to move to the cloud, they think that moving to the cloud would reduce the responsibility. तो मैं यूपी से हूँ तो मैं बोलूँगा ना मुन्ना ना, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं होता है, ठीक है. बट दिस इज अ मिथ एक्चुअली. हाँ, let's say if I take this IaaS, so obviously so basically cloud is actually a shared responsibility model. It runs on a shared responsibility. If I take in just IaaS, the responsibility of the hardware, the security of the hardware will be gone. You don't have to worry about where my hardware would be, who gonna maintain it, what about the electricity bill and everything. That's for the cloud provider. But the application, right? The security of the application, how are you going to deploy it? Everything is your responsibility. So some of the pointer that I do, some of the points that we suggest to the client, or in short, ये मेरे दिन का मतलब दिनचर्या है मेरी ये. So number one is like operational sameness. So what I mean by operational sameness? So standardization of the deployment process across environment. You have dev, you have prod, you have stage, you have pre-prod. I mean, you have thousands of environment. How would you deploy to respective environment in a very standard format? Consistent security policy, right? Access control, how would you manage? Who need access to the dev? Who need access to the prod? Who need access to the like pre-prod or anything? And then monitoring and logging. Next is compliance and governance. When you run something in EU, or you have a healthcare tech, let's say you have a healthcare product in USA, you have to follow certain compliance, and your application or whatever is that, it need to meet the like regulatory guidelines. Without that, or if they found that you are not meeting, you would be penalized very heavily. So you have to make sure that your application running in whichever cloud, in whatever form, it need to meet all those things. Then you have infrastructure management and scale. So infrastructure is actually directly proportional to your growth. The more your company grow, the more your user base increases, infrastructure would increase. It can be exponential increase, it can be normal increase, but yeah, it would increase. Now point is, when it would increase, how are you going to handle those things, like scaling? Flipkart पे जब big billion day sale आती है, तो कई बार वो लैग कर जाता है क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोग ₹1 का ब्लेंडर खरीदने भागते हैं कि हमको चाहिए, या फिर आईफोन खरीदने भागते हैं. तो सेम क्वेश्चन, हाउ वुड यू मैनेज द स्केलिंग एट दैट बिग बिलियन डे सेल जहाँ सबको चाहिए कि हमको EMI पे iPhone 60 Pro लेके मारने का है बॉस. तो and then do you need an orchestrator or not? Do you need a CI/CD or not? Do we need automation? I mean, yes, you do, but so these are the questions that you have to handle during like infrastructure management. Then DevOps and automation. So like what would be the methodology? In case of CI/CD, how would the CI/CD would look? Will it be self-managed or managed, or maybe what kind of tool we would be using? And then you also have to continuously monitoring, continuously like troubleshooting in case something goes wrong. Even for that, even for the CI/CD tool also. And then security. So security is very important. I know no one gives a fuck about it. I'm so sorry for the language. Please don't block me. But yes, people doesn't talk about security as they need to talk. आप कोई भी ऐसा ऐसा गूगल करोगे ना सिक्योरिटी ब्रीच, आपको बहुत सारे दिख जाएंगे, कोई भी कंपनी हो. मतलब अगर वो कंपनी, मैं बताऊं, खमन ढोकला भी बेचती होगी ना, उसमें भी सिक्योरिटी ब्रीच कभी ना कभी हुआ होगा. लाइक बिग बास्केट में हुआ था. वाई? द कंपनीज आर नॉट इन्वेस्टिंग, आर नॉट फोकसिंग सिक्योरिटी एज दे हैव टू. So when we talk to this client, we make sure the solution that we are presenting, like in this case, GKE Enterprise, if we are presenting, everything needs to be secure, everything needs to be well maintained, ताकि किसी का data कभी बाहर ना जाए. So yeah, like security standards maintain करने होते हैं, and then fine grain. So there is a principle called least access privilege. किसको पता है? अरे भाई इसको तो जान लो कम से कम. मैं ऐसे गुजराती में कैसे समझाऊँ, मेरे को गुजराती नहीं आती, बट हाँ. So least privilege access is it's a principle actually. So the principle of least access privilege says जिसको जितनी नीड हो परमिशन की उतनी ही देनी चाहिए, right? मैं इसको हिंदी में बोल दे रहा हूँ. So if as a cloud infra engineer there is a network project going on somewhere, I don't need an admin permission there. Probably I would need something related to my job, maybe just let's say cluster creation permission or log viewers, or if I'm a DevOps engineer, or maybe at the SRE, I would need permission on the monitoring alerting side. And then you have an optimization phase also. So cost optimization, resource optimization, and there is a question that every company right now is answering, what would happen if something goes wrong? तो हमने कंपनी एक्चुअली हमें कंपनी को कर रहे थे, मतलब वो कंसल्ट कर रहा था, रिसेंट की बात है. वो मुझसे क्या पूछते हैं, ए रोहन ये बताओ अगर पूरा GCP ही डाउन हो जाता तो हम कैसे करेंगे? तो अब यार इसका आंसर तो मेरे पास भी नहीं था. मैंने क्या पूछा क्लाइंट से, आपको सही में लगता है कि GCP डाउन हो जाएगा, मतलब दुनिया तहस नहस हो जाएगी? बट येस, द क्वेश्चन वॉज वेरी वैलिड. आई वुड से मैं उसको इनवैलिडेट नहीं कर सकता हूँ, क्योंकि एज अ कंपनी, एज अ मल्टीनेशनल और मे बी एन एंटरप्राइज, यू हैव टू थिंक अबाउट दोज थिंग कि अगर पूरा GCP, AWS, Azure ये दुनिया ही चली गई तो हमारा एप्लीकेशन कहाँ चलेगा? ओके, सो जंपिंग बैक ऑन द टॉपिक, मेरे पास बहुत टाइम तो है नहीं. So Kubernetes engine, so Google GKE is actually powerful, comprehensive, customizable, and flexible managed service provided by GCP for running your containers as a microservice. ये हम लोग बोलते हैं जब क्लाइंट को समझाना होता है, ऐसे मतलब ऐसे रटाया हुआ है. And in short, it's a managed CaaS, container as a service. So yep, it's managed. The best part about it, Google manages your control plane. So अगर like जैसे बस आपने उठाया कि they know Kubernetes, सबको पता है कंट्रोल प्लेन होता है, जैसे मास्टर स्लेव कॉन्सेप्ट होता है. तो जो कंट्रोल प्लेन होगा, it would be managed by and maintained by Google absolutely. You have no visibility on that. You are not responsible for that. Google or any cloud provider would be responsibly handling that thing. But the nodes, the application is your responsibility. So when I said nodes, what would be your node resource? How much CPU you're going to have? How many node pool you have? How many nodes you would have? Maybe 10, 20. Storage, everything. It's your responsibility. Okay. So यहाँ तक तो था like my experience about the GKE. Now before moving to the GKE Enterprise, please यहाँ पे एक scenario है. I would request everyone to read this scenario. और मैं आपके साथ read कर देता हूँ. So an enterprise running their application successfully on containers on Kubernetes cluster. which are scattered around multiple cloud, and even some application are even running on on-premises Kubernetes. So the best thing about Kubernetes is, that's why companies adopting. You can run the Kubernetes on cloud as well as on your on-premises. आपको same functionality मिलेगी. On-premises का advantage is that you have a better control on your control plane. You can do whatever you want with the control plane. So that's a scenario statement. FYI, this scenario statement is actually inspired, or I would say not copied, but yeah, partially copied from a real project that we have did. And this 1,500 heavy cluster is a very small dummy number. In reality, we had a very huge, like a fleet of cluster, I would say, in जिसमें हमको client को solution provide करना था. So assuming एक अच्छी दुनिया में हम लोग रहते हैं, so assuming everything is working fine, सारे के सारे cluster is working absolutely fine. There is no red icon. ये वाला पता है ना, ऐसे उल्टा वाला होता है. There is no that sign in any of the cluster. The application is running successfully. आपका application एकदम अच्छा चल रहा है. आपके पैसे बहुत अच्छे से आ रहे हैं. What's next? The question is what's next? Number was cluster operational. So focus on the number. It's 1,500 cluster. It's not a small number. Even if I talk about the enterprise, just like there are 3 categories of enterprise: small, mid, and then you have large. So this number is pretty high. What about the cluster operation? How you would managing the entire 1,500 cluster? What about governance and compliance? So when I say 1,500 cluster, it means you are already an enterprise. Your application would have some end user from Europe or from US, or if you are in fintech, you have to follow their compliance. If you are in health tech, you have to follow US HIPAA. How would you manage those things? Then sameness. When you are running this number of cluster or more, you have to ensure that cluster sameness, or when I say sameness, like सारे cluster एक तरह होने चाहिए. Because if there is no sameness, it would be very, 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 very hard to maintain the clusters. Then service discovery. When you have this much cluster, let's say you have a Facebook, right? Maybe your login microservice resides in some other cluster. Maybe let's say 586th cluster. And your sign-up page or the entire logic container is running somewhere else. How that two service would discover each other? So service discovery, and then last but not the least, scaling. So in short, like this is Carlos Sainz, one of my favorite Formula 1 driver, and he's famous for like a smooth operator. So in short, you want to become a smooth operator like him, although he has won only 2 races, but he is very cool and Spanish guy, you know, hola. So for this, Google Kubernetes Enterprise, we call it GKE Enterprise, helps you to become Carlos Sainz by providing more power and more flexibility. So what's a GKE Enterprise? In a very short layman, in a nutshell, it's a premium subscription-based service built on the top of the GKE Standard. So yeah, GKE has like 2 editions, Standard and Enterprise. It has 2 flavors, Standard and Autopilot. So Standard Autopilot is like different thing, but here we are talking about the edition. And then it streamlines management with automation and simplifies governance and centralized control. And then it manage, govern, and operate numerous GKE, as well as your non-GKE cluster at a scale under a logical grouping, we call it fleet. So like we have like Navy fleet. In GKE Enterprise, you create like cluster fleet to manage all the clusters. Like in our scenario, 1,500 GKE and non-GKE cluster as a fleet. You're going to treat them as just one, rather than treating them like as an individual cluster. Okay. Some of the features that it has, like fleet management, multi-cluster ingress, security posture, configuration sync, binary authorization teams, compliance, policy controller, built-in observability, or managed service mesh. So I'm not going to cover all this functionality, and it has like more. You can see etc. I'm breaking the English rule not to write more than one etc. But yes, it has more and more. And Google is like dedicating their entire team to like work on this and bring the more functionality. So whatever customer is paying, they get the most out of it. So I'm not going to cover all of the functionality feature it's offering for the two reasons. Number one, I don't have much time, like 20 minutes left. Second thing, मुझे आता भी नहीं है. मैंने वहीं बोलूँगा, मतलब I'm going to just talk about जिस पे मैंने काम कर रखा है, तो बाकी मुझे आता नहीं है. तो जो मैं नहीं कवर कर रहा हूँ, प्लीज़ उसके बारे में सवाल मत पूछिएगा, मुझे बहुत अच्छा नहीं लगेगा. मैं बहुत दूर से आया हूँ. Okay, fleet management. Okay, so fleet management, how to explain this? Okay. To work efficiently and smoothly with your GKE and non-GKE cluster, in this case, वो 1,500 cluster, you gonna add or register all of your clusters under a logical grouping called fleet. And then you will up-level the management from treating each and every single cluster as one to treating them as an individual. So it's like वो अपन जाते थे ना पिकनिक जाते थे तो एक ग्रुप बना देते थे टीचर को अब टीचर को सारे बच्चों को एक तरह ही ट्रीट करना होता था द सेम लॉजिक सो यू गेट अ सिंप्लीफाइड मैनेजमेंट यू गेट अ अप लेवल मैनेजमेंट ऑफ योर इंटायर क्लस्टर एज अ फ्लीट बट द थिंग इज लाइक फ्लीट इज नॉट ओनली अबाउट लॉजिकली ग्रुपिंग द क्लस्टर एज लाइक अंडर अ फ्लीट it rather than just like grouping it provides I would say exclusivity achieving a trust among the members of the fleet, policy, better security, consistency, compliance, policy auditing and everything. And also the sameness. When I say sameness, in this case, application sameness, identity sameness, and service sameness. And yes, it supports GKE and non-GKE cluster, doesn't matter where it's running. So yeah, better hybrid and multi-cloud support. Config sync is a powerful tool that is being offered under the GKE Enterprise that ensures the consistency of the configuration that you need for the Kubernetes and allows organization to follow the GitOps. So in case someone is not aware of the GitOps, it's a universal best practices for organization for managing Kubernetes configuration at scale. So you write your entire configuration in a declarative fashion using YAML and JSON, and it has a very nice and seamless integration with any versioning control tool like GitHub, GitLab. And you commit your configuration to the GitHub, and it will start managing the configuration from there. And once you push your configuration there and you attach the configuration thing, so attaching means you just have to like go to the UI or use the Terraform, pass the GitHub or GitLab link, and a couple of more values, and that's it. It will start the automatic synchronization of the configuration and will treat them as a desired state. So if there is any drift in the configuration, the config sync will reconcile the drifted state to the desired state. And then you can install it at like fleet level. So all the 1,000, you hit one button or run the Terraform apply, it will install the config sync on 1,500 cluster. But in case, let's say, वो 1500 में जो 1000 थे, उनको वो भी तो बेकार थे, वो testing का था. You need it only on 500 cluster. Yes, you can just do it. Go, select the cluster, and bingo. And it has both cluster scope and namespace scope. So when I say something, when I say this, so जितने भी ये लोग यहाँ पे Kubernetes पे काम किए होंगे, they know something called namespace. So namespace is actually, you can say, virtual cluster inside a physical cluster. That's the like easiest definition I can think of for the namespace. So yes, this config sync has a cluster scope and name scope. So what does it mean? You have a central admin team or an administrator team who is actually responsible for managing the infrastructure of the cluster and the policy across or over the cluster. But the app dev team or application developer team, or I would say application operator team, is solely responsible for what's happening within the namespace. Maybe you need namespace level policy. So the app dev team is responsible for that. They can do whatever they want in the namespace. They are doing the deployment. Policy controller. So the first one is actually about the GitOps. The fleet one is about the management. The config sync was about the GitOps. And this policy controller is about the security. So it's a powerful tool which ensures the consistent policies to be in place, maybe in the fleet or on the fleet or maybe in the clusters, with the enforcement action. So there are 3 enforcement action: allow, deny, and warn. So whatever the enforcement action you specify and other parameters, policy control make sure that वो हमेशा वहाँ पे लगा रहे actually, like to be enforced all the time. So you define your policy. Again, you can use the declarative, like it's a YAML. So you define the policy, push it to the any config, or you can use the UI. As per like today, there is no way to change the enforcement action from the UI. You have to do it via code. So yep. And then it will start. It would enforce your policy on the fleet. And if there is any violation of the policy, it would automatically remediate the policy violation. And this helps you to actually remain assist compliant and secure. So क्या होता है ना, बहुत सारे ऑडिटिंग होती हैं, तो उसमें ये सारी चीज़ें भी दिखानी पड़ती है कि like you have let's say 20 policies, how many times it has been violated. If has not, so yeah, the policy controller has something called policy auditing, or actually it does like by just logging everything, which can be used during the policy auditing. So you can show the auditors that, yeah, these were the policy that we put it in the place, and that's how many times it has been violated and everything. And then it has a seamless integration with the config sync. So as we've seen in the config sync, the job of the config sync is to maintain the consistency. You code your policy, you put it to the GitHub, you connect the GitHub and config sync. Now config sync will always keep the policies in an enforcement action all the time. And if there is any drift, it would just change it back or reconcile back to the desired state. And then it comes with a full library of pre-built like policies. So what does it mean? It has 2 things, the custom constraint library and the bundles. So एक हमने प्रोजेक्ट किया था, उसमें हमने GKE Enterprise हमने क्लाइंट को implement किया था. They were like very huge actually. They were like one of the largest logistic leader in the world. And we actually built a lot of custom constraint like policies because उनके internal compliance भी बहुत सारे थे actually, क्योंकि वो पूरे world में उनके like they had more than 150 office around the world, तो हमको वो करना पड़ा था ताकि सब कुछ like internal and external both remain compliant throughout the year. So yes, with the custom template library of the policy controller, you can simply use to build your own custom or maybe internal policies. How many of you know service mesh? Okay. So, जिसको नहीं पता, it's a nightmare for any engineer to like establish or to like set up a service mesh. और वो मतलब जिंदगी तबाह कर देता है, लोगों को तलाक करवा देता है वो. It's like that. But in GKE Enterprise, you have the option of managed service mesh that is fully integrated and fully supported by GKE Enterprise, and it is based on the hThe. तो जिनको service mesh पता होगा, उन लोग को hThe भी like they are aware of its hThe. So what it provides, effortless setup and management, no more wrestling with any complex configuration, which means no more talak. A managed service mesh take care of everything, like the installation, service discovery, maintenance, updation, and everything. With instant observability, you get an X-ray vision of the services that you are running in those 1,500 clusters. And with that, you would understand where you have to optimize your application, how the service discovery is happening, how good it is. And then with the security, you can lock down your microservices with encryption, authentication, and authorization without actually cluttering your application code, which means और कम तलाक से हम ऐसे GKE Enterprise client की भी help करने निकला है, लोगों की भी help करने निकला हुआ है. And then with traffic control, you easily route the traffic and balance load, and helps you to do this the canary deployment or the alpha beta testing. And with all this functionality, your microservices actually become superhero themselves, which means like automatic failure deterrence. Okay, multi-cluster ingress or MCI is an offering that's here to, I would say, ensure the traffic to be reached on the cluster on time. So it has advanced traffic routing, which means it intelligently reroute your traffic to the respective cluster based on that cluster location, based on the cluster health, cluster capacity, and allows you to perform the gradual rollouts as well as the alpha beta testing. And this MCI actually is actually a single source of ingress for all of the clusters. So वो जो वहाँ हमने 1500 क्लस्टर देखे थे उनके लिए सिर्फ एक MCI होगा जहाँ से ट्रैफिक को पूरी रिडायरेक्शन मिलेगी. So in case of troubleshooting, this guys really helps. There is less operational overhead, and team can work on other thing also. Then you have something called global load balancing, which is to distribute the traffic across multiple cluster that is being scattered in multi-region or maybe multi-cloud. So that global load balancing is here. And it reduces, actually it improves the application availability and reduces the latency because क्योंकि सारे region में वो equally उसको treat करेगा. Then it implements the failover mechanism by itself. So in case something goes wrong or one of the cluster goes wrong, the traffic would redirect to the next cluster based on the certain factors. Then it also terminates the SSL and TLS at the ingress gateway, which ensures the secure communication in your cluster. Okay, Teams. This is not a Microsoft Teams. So this entire functionality has been designed to facilitate the team collaboration and achieving, I would say, like easy go within the Kubernetes environment. So you can have multiple environment within a single cluster. So teams are here. And with the hierarchical resource management, you organize your cluster, namespace, and other resource into logical grouping. So fleet is already a logical grouping. With teams, you can have one more logical grouping, which means better control and yeah, better everything. And it allows fine-grained access and the policy management. Then you have RBAC, role-based access control, which provides granular control based on the teams, based on the responsibility, based on the projects, and based on the other certain factors that your organization have. So this ensures the separation of duty among the administrator, operator, or viewer. Then you have team-specific policy. So every team has a different requirement. So with this, you can have a standard to specific teams, and you can make sure that each team is actually adhering to the appropriate guidelines that your organization or that particular team has. And with team-based quota, you can actually set or restrict the usage of the resource, like CPU. You don't want to give like more than 2 GPU or maybe 3 CPU to any team. Yes, you can definitely do that with the team-specific quotas. So this ensures the proper resource consumption, or I would say the resource optimization, and avoid any accidental interference. And then last is like simplified collaboration. So as I mentioned, the entire tool is designed to facilitate the collaboration. So yes, you have easy sharing of resource. You have better knowledge transfer. With this, you have a predefined access pattern. So in case a new guy is joining your team, you can just provide the access with that. And each and every team in that would have their own monitoring dashboard and logging for the better visibility. Okay, so advantages. So if I sum up everything that I talked about the GKE Enterprise, number one, you have a GKE native integration, which means for GKE Enterprise, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to jump from like tabs to tabs, links to links. You just go to the GKE, click, enable, and that's it. First 90 days are free, and then you can start paying it. And then, as I mentioned, you just have to go and click the button. So yeah, it's a one-click enablement. You don't have to buy any license. You don't have to contact the Google team. You don't have to like buy any license and saying we need some discount on that. Then hybrid and multi-cloud support. 1,500 clusters scattered around multi-cloud, multiple cloud, maybe on-premises. You can easily do it by registering those things. And when I say register, it's not direct, but you just have to run like 5 or 6 commands, and that's it, which is like fairly easy. Better visibility. You have the very beautiful blue, green, red, all the colors of the rainbow in the better visibility in that graph. You can check what's exactly going on your fleet. You can also check the specific cluster. You want to check like 966 cluster, what's going on there? Yes, you can do that. Compliant. With that, you are ensuring that your application running in US doesn't get sued by the Department of Justice for not following any compliance. And then security, with all those things like the policy control, that's one of the security tools that it provides. You remain secure, your application remains secure, your trust or your among the users actually increases. But so हर चीज like every coin has a two side, वो छापा और काटा or head and tails. Similarly, GKE Enterprise also has some cons. Or if not wrong, it has more cons than it pros, I would say, based on my unbiased view. वैसे मैं बहुत biased हूँ, but यहाँ पे मैं biased हो रहा हूँ. So yeah, the con enters the chat and like केम छो मोटा भाई और okay. Number one is expensive. It's dead expensive. I'm not talking about $200, $300, $800. I'm talking about $3,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 or more. In case of 1,500 clusters that we saw, expect a bill of at least $20,000 for managing those 1,500 clusters. उसके ऊपर जो आप करोगे वो अपना अलग से आएगा, तो plus GST also. Second is GCP vendor lock-in. So the functionality that we see and that I ignored very professionally, it actually causes the GCP vendor lock-in. So you're going to configure the GCP, the config sync in GCP. You're going to configure the policy controller in GCP, the MCI, and the other binary authorization, teams, and everything would be configured in GCP. Next day, if Microsoft Azure team, sales team is very good and they sold the customer their ARC, which is like the competitor, they're going to move it back. Or they will try to move. 10 रुपए बचाने के लिए तो हम मर्डर कर देते हैं यहाँ पे इंडिया में. But with this, you would have a lock-in. So you have to redo everything that you have done in like जितने भी साल को आपको लगे, you have to redo everything. Then third-party applications or alternatives are available. So when I talked about config sync, many of you think, यार ये चीज़ तो मैं Argo CD से भी कर सकता हूँ, जो रोहन ने बताया 2 मिनट खड़ा होके. So yes, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि मतलब Mars से solution आ रहा है. So yes, there are third-party solution or alternatives are available. Maybe open source managed, depends आपका organization उसको कैसे treat करता है. Like there are so many organizations which doesn't allow to use open source software, क्योंकि उनकी policy ही नहीं होती है. Then there are so many organizations which prefer to stay as native as they want, or they can actually. Then it also can lead to some over-engineered solution. Let's say you just need a policy controller. So उसके लिए क्या मतलब अब उसके लिए GKE Enterprise use करना would be an overkill. Proper over-engineered solution, and then you are paying based on the price, and then based on the number of cluster you have. So एक functionality के लिए use करना is like from me it's like no. Then limited control over infrastructure. Whatever the functionality it's providing, where it's running, how it's being managed, who is seeing, what's the hardware, CPU, you have no visibility, it's zero. You're just gonna see a blue and white dashboard with all the information that actually you need, but in case an organization need to have a visibility of their infra, it's a no-go for you. And then it can be really complex. And yeah, as I mentioned, as per today, there is no way to change the enforcement action of the policy from UI. So anyway, you have to go to via the code. So let's say the policy is in deny, you want to change it to the allow, you have to use it via code. Again, I don't see a point. And last is not fully mature. It's still in progress. Google team is working, and they always say, we'll get back to you. But no one get back to us. Whenever we ask or whenever we try to compare this functionality with the third party available, because client asked us to, they made us to do it, go find this solution. We says, oh, I'm so sorry, this is not available. Oh no, we want to use it, we need it, blah, blah, blah. And every time we reached out to Google, hey, Google, we need it. They're like, yeah, we are working on that, we'll get back to you. And जिंदगी बीत गई, मैं 27 साल का, Google कभी वापस ही नहीं आया आज तक. So yes, it's not fully mature. कब होगा पता नहीं है. Then operational overhead. So there are 2 flavors in GKE Standard. Where are you responsible for everything? The nodes, the scaling, and everything. And there is another one, it's autopilot. You're responsible for the deploying. And the Google, the Google is responsible for the scaling and everything, like based on the traffic, and there is like no need to define the scaling there. So not every feature is actually supported for the autopilot. So what does it mean? I have seen so many companies which are not very infrastructure heavy. They are more into PaaS and SaaS. They prefer either to go absolutely managed. We have something called Cloud Run, so it's a like super managed Kubernetes solution. Or maybe they go with autopilot, so they don't have to worry about the infrastructure and everything. But the GKE Enterprise functionality, they are not available. So if the company is heavily invested on autopilot, this is not for them. They have to move back to the GKE Standard, and then they have to implement this if they are an enterprise. Then one fleet per GCP project. I mean, this might be for the compliant from the Google side. So let's assume you have like 3 environment, dev, stage, and prod, and you want to manage them under a fleet. You need at least 3 projects. So the number of project would be same as the number of environment. This is like the basic maths. But the organization, they prefer to have a central visibility. So for the monitoring, like Google suggests, put everything in one project, connect all the project there, and start monitoring from central project. But in this case, there is no option. You have to like jump from project to project, environment to environment to do that. And you can have like more fleets based on the design and everything. Long-term and short-term analysis. At any given point of time, if you are using or you are not using the GKE Enterprise, the price for former would be high. There is no way that you cannot, like you can reduce the price by using GKE Enterprise. So yeah, it would be higher. Then team upskilling is required. You are using it, you have to like upskill the team, you have to teach the team that yes, we have to do this, we have to use the config thing, we have to use the policy, etc., etc. So yes, you have to, the team needs to spend time on that. This is good when you are multi-cloud, and it is good for the enterprise or MNC, otherwise बहुत पैसा खाएगा और पूरी जेब हल्की कर देगा. And last is that GCP has the big plan, but there is no ETA. Yeah, there are alternatives. So as I mentioned, the fleet management, they have Rancher. कितने लोग ने Rancher के बारे में सुना है? अरे भाई साहब, बस. So yes, we have something called Rancher, जो कि fleet management का exactly same चीज़ करता है. It provides even more functionality, more flexibility. Then Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management for Kubernetes. I don't know इतना बड़ा नाम क्यों रख दिया उसका, कुछ और रख देते सही रहता. Then config sync, Argo CD is a very popular open source tool for this thing, for the CD. And then you have Flex CD. I have used both, and they are like fantabulous CD tool. Then policy controller, OPA and Polaris. I have used the OPA. Polaris मैंने छाप लिया है. Built-in observability, the Prometheus and Grafana, the Elastic Stack, the Thanos. These are the OG guys, right? And then teams. You have like native RBAC. तो जो मैंने अभी teams के बारे में बताया, you can exactly do the same thing from the native RBAC. तो अगर आपके पास GKE Enterprise नहीं है, तो आप वो भी exactly same चीज़ आप like उसको कर सकते हैं. Then you have key clock. Multi-cluster के लिए you have hThe, and then Kong, like from the King Kong. And the managed service mesh, you have hThe, like very popular, and the console. It's like the proper original gangster in this thing. And then binary authorization, you have Notary, and the open policy agent or OPA with gatekeeper. ये last वाला मैंने apply किया था एक customer के लिए because they wanted. It's very good. It works flawlessly. Okay, verdict. So if you are, or if your infrastructure is very huge and primarily focuses on microservices, or you are multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud, or planning to do so in future, or you see that you would do it, this GKE Enterprise is definitely for you. And obviously, if you have money, like paisa hai to bhaiya sab kuch hai. On the other hand, if you are in a startup, or you are not even the enterprise, or you are not multi-cloud, or even if your GCP infrastructure is not that very huge, so it actually depends. I don't have much time. Actually, it's almost over. I'm going to take like 30 more seconds. There was a client. They only had 6 clusters, but they are still using the GKE Enterprise. Reason, at any given point of time, उनके कम से कम 5,000 नोड चल ही रहे थे किसी भी एक क्लस्टर में. So So 6 को अगर 5 से multiply करोगे तो it's a very like 30,000 नोड चल रहे हैं proper. The smallest cluster they had it was with 500 nodes. अभी Google ने उसको और लिमिट थी उस टाइम पे सिर्फ 15,000 like 15,000. अभी Google ने recently लिमिट बढ़ा के 65,000 कर दी है. So like 5,000 node के अगर average लेके चलें, so you need something, something out of the box to do that. But the thing is that, I think I missed one point. So just GKE Enterprise is more over like GKE Standard, because it doesn't allow you to like change any physical configuration. Like your cluster has like 2 GB, you want to switch to 3, you have to go to the console or make changes into Terraform and then do it. So GKE Enterprise doesn't allow you to do it. So yes, it's more over like a GKE Extended. So yeah, back to the verdict. If you're a startup or a small intermediate company and not much focus on the microservices, or primarily focus on microservices, but currently are not that level, yeah, GKE Enterprise would be an overkill and would be very expensive for you. Thank you.